We don't need the old lady. You can deal with the dead weight. Alicia, my sister-in-law, said with a smug smile. She probably doesn't care about Grandma as long as she gets the house. My brother also grinned, looking at Grandma and me. This isn't a place where Grandma can live her final days happily. That's why I declared. It's okay, I'll be with Grandma. My name is Amy Smith. I turned 50 this year. Currently, I live with my husband. We have 2 kids, but they moved out long ago after becoming adults. There were tough times juggling work and parenting when the kids were little, but looking back, it feels surprisingly short-lived. What fills the emptiness in my heart are my job, my husband, and Grandma. Currently, I work with my husband at a high-end restaurant. I run the place, while my husband, Jake, is the head chef. The reason I'm the owner is that I majored in business management in college and was interested in the restaurant business. At first, I wanted to provide my own dishes, but I quickly gave up. Seems like I didn't have a knack for cooking. Back in college, a posh hotel nearby was hiring kitchen helpers. Luckily, I got the job. But apparently, even as a part-timer, my cooking skills didn't meet professional standards. My knife skills were so bad that they quickly moved me to serving. Even if it was a lowly position, I wanted to gain some experience in the culinary world. It was my first setback. I ran straight to Grandma for comfort. After comforting me for a bit, Grandma looked me in the eyes and said, "Amy, I know you have dreams. But there isn't just one path. Some might be detours, but no road is useless. So, keep your chin up and give it a shot." Encouraged by Grandma's strong words, I replied, "Thanks, Grandma. I'm gonna give it my best shot." Thanks to Grandma's words, I managed to keep going and continued my serving job throughout college. Grandma was always kind and always stood by my side. For someone like me, who lost both parents, she's the most dependable figure in my life. And then I met Jake. Jake was training as a chef at the same posh hotel where I worked part-time. Even though he was in training, he had been working there for about 5 years and was trusted with some parts of the cooking. One day, probably having heard from other staff, Jake found out about my interest in cooking. He said, "If you'd like, I can teach you. I'm still in training, so I can only show you the basics." "Really? Thank you so much," I replied with a big smile. From then on, we started visiting each other's homes and began our cooking lessons. Since we couldn't use the hotel kitchen, we practiced in our own kitchens. As I learned from him, Jake and I got closer and eventually started dating. After 3 years of dating, we got married. We happily became a married couple. Even after our marriage, Jake continued his training at the high-end hotel. I took a job at a startup that managed multiple restaurants to learn about business management. There, I learned the ropes of running a business. It was a series of challenges, far more intricate than my college classes. I made mistakes countless times and got reprimanded by my bosses. However, as I continued to fail, I gradually accumulated successful experiences. In the end, using the startup company's program, I opened an upscale restaurant. Even though I was an employee, I successfully realized my dream of managing a restaurant. Of course, I chose Jake as the head chef. Jake had just finished his training, so he decided to leave his job at the luxury hotel without any regrets. And that's how Jake and I combined our strengths to run an upscale restaurant. Work is going smoothly, but my personal life has been put on the back burner. I'm so busy that the time I can spend with my grandmother has drastically decreased since my student days. For someone like me, my dependable grandmother now lives with my brother and his wife. My brother, Bob, who is 3 years older than me. However, he's a bit quirky. When I told him about becoming an entrepreneur using the startup company's program, he completely shot down the idea, saying, "Why are you doing something so high risk? Having a regular job is the most stable. Besides, being a salaried manager doesn't pay much and it's not even worth it." "Come on, Bob, don't you think that's a bit harsh?" "Sure, I'm using the company's program." I protested against Bob's blunt words. But Bob seemed unwilling to change his stance and continued to argue. "Listen, Amy. Stability is the key in this world. Yet, you live so recklessly. Your husband's the same, right? Both of you managing a business together is too reckless. If the restaurant fails, you both go down. What? I was taken aback. Just remember, if things go south and you end up in debt, don't come running to me. I'm only looking out for Alicia. I was really shocked by this outburst. In my case, I have the support of my employer, so I'm not incurring any personal debt. But before I could retaliate, my sister-in-law, Alicia, chimed in. You and your husband really live on the edge, don't you, Amy? But if things go bad, please don't rely on us. Hearing this, I resolved never to ask them for help, no matter how tough things got. The reason my grandmother ended up in the care of this couple was due to their unilateral decision and high-handedness. One day, when I visited my grandmother's house where she lived alone, Alicia answered the doorbell and blurted out, "Why are you here, Amy?" Surprised to see Alicia there, I asked, "Why are you here, Alicia?" "This is my grandmother's house." Realizing the situation, Alicia replied, "I've been living here since the other day to take care of Bob's grandmother. Got a problem with that? You're probably too busy with your restaurant anyway, right?" It was true, I had just started my upscale restaurant and was very busy. I couldn't always be by my grandmother's side. If something happened when Jake and I weren't there, it would be a disaster. On the other hand, Alicia was a housewife and could be with my grandmother during the day. Confidently, she said, "I can be with her." All I could reply was, "Please take care of her." After that, I often visited my grandmother's house. Every time I did, Alicia would sarcastically say, "Again? You need to let go of your grandmother." Still, I was worried about my grandmother. But this was her house. However, getting into an argument with Alicia, who was living with my grandmother, wasn't a good idea. So, I would say, "Sorry, I just wanted to see her for a bit," and kept visiting my grandmother. Every time I visited, my grandmother seemed happy to see me. But over time, she seemed to be losing her energy, and I was worried. Then, one day, as usual, I found her collapsed at the entrance. "Grandma, what happened?" "Hey, stay with me!" I shouted at my grandmother, but there was no response. In a panic, I called an ambulance and rushed to the hospital with my unconscious grandmother. "She has only 6 months left." The doctor's prognosis was devastating. My beloved grandmother was seriously ill. Apparently, the hospital she was brought to was where her primary doctor practiced. According to the doctor, there was nothing more the hospital could do. They could only provide palliative care, and since my grandmother wished to be treated at home, they respected that decision. While I was hearing this devastating news from the doctor, a nurse informed me that my grandmother had woken up. "Grandma!" As I entered the hospital room, my grandmother looked in my direction. "Amy, I'm so sorry. I should have told you earlier," Grandma murmured weakly. My eyes began to blur with tears. "Is it true? Why didn't you tell me sooner? Do Alicia and Bob know?" Tears streaming down my face, I asked her, and she slowly shook her head in response. "No one knows. I was planning to just quietly fade away all by myself." Seeing Grandma like this saddened me deeply. At the same time, I felt that something needed to be done. "Let's tell Alicia and Bob about it." Before I knew it, I had made this strong suggestion to her. Grandma seemed taken aback by my sudden proposal. Surely, with a situation as dire as this, even those troublemakers, my brother and his wife, would change their attitudes. At least, that's what I believed. 3 days later, Grandma was discharged from the hospital. But it wasn't a positive kind of discharge. There's simply nothing more the hospital could do for her. Supporting her, I took Grandma back to her house. When we entered her house, which she handed me the keys to, both Bob and Alicia were there, probably because it was Sunday. "Where have you been all this time? Anyway, it's been kind of nice without the old lady around." Alicia was talking with laughter. Bob grinned and agreed, saying, "Indeed, it's relaxing not having that nagging old lady around." Our grandma is visibly in a rough shape. Yet, I can't believe they would make such an inappropriate joke in front of her. I got so angry that I snapped back at them. "Both of you, cut it out. Grandma is sick and has only 6 months to live. She can barely stand now. How can you say such things? When I shouted, they both seemed taken aback for a moment. But soon Bob, with a cynical laugh, muttered, "You're kidding, right?" Alicia didn't seem to believe it either. She smirked and looked at me. So, I told them with a stern face. Sadly, it's true. If you think it's a lie, why don't you ask Grandma's primary physician? Grandma, with her weak voice, also added, "I really do have only 6 months. I imagine I won't be able to do many things soon." Upon hearing this, Alicia's face twisted. What? So, I have to take care of her? I don't want to deal with that. I just came to this house to save on rent. I absolutely don't want to care for her. Old lady, just leave now. Alicia waved her hand, shooing Grandma away. Tears formed in Grandma's eyes. We don't need you, old lady. Amy will take care of you, Alicia said smugly. Probably, as long as she gets the house, she doesn't care about Grandma. Bob was also smirking as he watched me and Grandma. He seemed to have no feelings for our Grandma. She won't be happy in this place. So, I declared, "It's okay, Grandma. I'll be by your side." I quickly countered, "This is Grandma's house, and she wishes to spend her last moments here." However, Alicia stood her ground. Sorry, Amy. I've always known that Bob and Alicia have bad attitudes, but I never thought it would come to this. Grandma apologized repeatedly. She seemed on the verge of tears, her shoulders trembling. Seeing her like that hurt me. But Alicia looked at us with pure disdain. Can you leave now? You're in the way. Also, don't come to us for help later, even if you regret it. We won't help you, not even with a cent. She sighed deeply, looking very annoyed. Really? I definitely won't be taking care of Grandma. Don't expect us to look after her, Bob said, grimacing. It's Alicia and Bob who have imposed themselves on Grandma's home and been a burden. Yet, now that they know about her limited time left, they want to throw her out. I've come to truly despise Bob and Alicia. So, I responded for the last time. I won't have anything to do with Bob or Alicia anymore. I'm gonna cut ties with you as family. If you regret it later, that's on you. It seemed Grandma had also been bottling up her feelings about them, as she whispered, I won't see you two ever again. Goodbye. If we cut ties, it'll be easier when you end up in a lot of debt, Bob said with a chuckle. Exactly, Alicia added. If Amy ends up drowning in debt, it has nothing to do with us since we've cut ties. So, good luck with taking care of the frail old lady and dealing with your debt. Ignoring Alicia's sarcastic wave, Grandma and I left the house. I brought Grandma to my home. As she stepped out of the taxi, she remarked, What a lovely house. In fact, our house is more than twice the size of Grandma's. Thanks to the company's policy, Jake and I, who run an upscale restaurant, receive not only a regular salary but also a special bonus. We get a cashback from the restaurant's profits. It's a unique system of our company. This system, which is like running an independent business, aims to motivate employees. Indeed, thanks to this policy, Jake and I receive a good income from the company with low risk. Our take-home pay is much higher than Bob's, who's just a regular worker. As I thought about that, the front door opened. Hello. Jake greeted me with a smile. I had informed Jake via email beforehand, and he was waiting at home to welcome our grandmother. Jake has been so busy with work that he hasn't had the chance to visit, so today is a long-awaited reunion with our grandmother. Our grandmother looks extremely happy to see Jake. He quickly ushered her into the living room and served some tea. Sipping her tea, grandmother seemed to relax a bit. For the past 6 months, I feel like I can finally live happily. I felt so out of place in that house. Grandmother muttered quietly. According to her, Alicia and her family had been neglecting grandmother all along. They wouldn't even cook her portion of the meals, and sometimes Alicia even took Grandma's pension as part of the household expenses. That's awful, I blurted out. Jake looked upset as well. After a moment of heavy silence, Jake, with determination, stood up and said, "I'm gonna do something about this. We should give them a taste of their own medicine. I can't stand being pushed around like this. I'd regret not standing up for grandmother." I got up as well and said, "We'll make sure they regret it." And so, we took a stand. A few days after we took action, my phone was flooded with calls from Bob's number. Even when ignored, the calls kept coming. I knew this would happen. I murmured. After letting it ring for quite some time, I finally answered. "Yes?"
Finally! What the hell did you do?
As soon as I answered, Alicia, sounding frantic, began questioning me. I figured she was using Bob's phone. "What are you talking about?" "I have no idea." I knew exactly what she was getting at, but I played dumb. Alicia, losing patience, pressed on.
"That's about Grandma's house. Suddenly, a real estate agent is demanding we vacate. Did you have something to do with this? It's our house now, mind your own business."
Alicia sounded cornered and irritated. Ignoring her outburst, I calmly responded. "Well, Grandma just sold her house. What's the problem?" Just because Alicia and her family lived there, they assumed ownership, but the house was still in grandmother's name. I don't get why they felt entitled to it. Alicia, sounding even more flustered, shot back.
"Why did she sell it? We're living there. Is this some sort of revenge? Just because you're struggling doesn't mean you have to be envious."
She didn't seem to believe the house had been sold. This was going nowhere. So I decided to lay out the facts for Alicia. It's true. The sale is already finalized. The property now belongs to the realtor. If you continue to stay there, it'll be trespassing. Alicia sounded completely lost for words. Turns out, after Jake and I decided to act, he went to a real estate agency with grandmother's power of attorney. They quickly moved through the selling process. By the way, when we explained the situation to Grandma, she was completely on board and signed the papers right away.
"I definitely don't want to hand the house over to Bob and his family,"
Grandmother had said, her face turning red with anger, which showed just how upset she was. As I explained the situation, Alicia began to panic on the other end.
"So suddenly? Where are we supposed to live now? We even gave up our previous apartment."
And with that, she broke down over the phone. Actually, according to what my grandma told me, Alicia, despite being a stay-at-home mom, was quite the big spender. She'd casually buy designer handbags and never missed her monthly spa treatments. Bob is just an office worker and definitely not earning a high salary. Because of that, it seemed like Alicia and him were struggling to make ends meet. Alicia had pre-existing debts, and their finances were a real mess. Under normal circumstances, that would be grounds for divorce, but Bob is too smitten with Alicia. Probably because she's a beauty. So, on Bob's suggestion, to save on rent, they both moved into my grandmother's house. But to be honest, I couldn't care less about their situation.
"I don't know why you came to me. Why don't you just stay in a motel or something until you find a new place?"
"Oh wait, you're broke, right?" I said sarcastically to Alicia. She seemed to think I had no idea about their financial struggles. Suddenly she looked panicked and whispered,
"How did you know?"
Bob, perhaps not wanting this to be known, just kept quiet. Then, my grandmother chimed in. "I told her." She continued, "Amy and Jake's home is really comfortable. It's spacious and clean, with all the latest appliances. It's worlds apart from where you lived before." And she chuckled. Bob immediately bit back.
"What the hell? How come you guys have money? Weren't you drowning in debt?"
His pride seemed hurt, and he was shouting in disbelief. I kindly informed him. "Aside from our salaries, we also get a percentage of the profits. So, I believe we earn significantly more than you. Plus, we're a two-income household. We probably make double what you do, easy." "No way." Bob seemed stunned on the other end of the line. "You always said being a salaried worker was the right path. Turns out, we're living a much wealthier life than you. You really had tunnel vision, didn't you?" I couldn't help but laugh. I could hear Bob growling over the phone. Upon realizing our affluence, Alicia started to butter me up.
Then can we stay at your place, Amy? If your house is that big, there should be room for us, right?
What a ridiculous proposal. I promptly declined.
Absolutely not. Didn't you specifically ask us not to rely on you? We've cut ties with you guys, so don't come crawling back now. Find your own way.
With that, I hung up. They've tried calling multiple times since, but I just ignore them. I never want to have anything to do with people like Bob and Alicia again. I hope they realize and regret their actions. Eventually, I heard they were caught shoplifting. The police contacted me, and I got to know about it. Apparently, Alicia's debt had snowballed to a point where Bob's salary alone couldn't cover it. Alicia even seemed to be taking her grandmother's pension. Debt collectors started showing up at Bob's workplace, which led to his debts being exposed and him getting fired. With no income, repaying their debts became even harder. Bob and Alicia seemed to have been struggling even for daily meals. As a result, they apparently shoplifted sandwiches and bread from a convenience store, and the store's staff reported them, leading to their arrest. Seems they've hit rock bottom. According to the police, they wanted me as their guarantor.
I messed up. I'm sorry, just look out for us.
Bob pleaded. But it's too little too late. Even Alicia, who usually had no regrets, seemed genuinely remorseful.
Please help us. I'll apologize for everything. Just give us a hand.
I heard Alicia has been pleading this way through the police. But this whole mess started because of Alicia's reckless spending. Bob being oblivious was also a problem. They brought this upon themselves. And after what they did to my dear grandmother, I can never forgive them. They can keep struggling for all I care. 3 months have passed since then. My grandmother is still alive and well. Which brings me so much joy. I took a caregiving leave and have been staying by her side. There's a real advantage to having a flexible job. Even though she has her tough moments, on her good days, we can walk around the garden together. These times are the most enjoyable and therapeutic for me. Grandma, your birthday's coming up. Is there anything you'd like to eat? I asked her. She responded, maybe a cake baked by you, Amy. Even now, she tries to make me feel better about my subpar cooking skills, and it really tugs at my heartstrings. I still want to be with my grandma, and I feel I haven't done enough for her. Every day, I want to make even just a little more memories with her. And I plan to be by her side for as long as she's with us.